Jennifer Gledhill was born on February 4th, 1983, and grew up in one of the cozy suburbs of Salt Lake City, Utah. Her family was dominated by traditional values, caring for each other, respect, and striving for harmony in the home. The parents recalled that their daughter was always distinguished by kindness, vivacity of character, and a sincere desire to make others happy. From a young age, Jennifer showed organizational skills and always tried to create a cozy atmosphere around herself. She was one of the most popular students at school. She actively participated in school life, studied art, and dreamed of a future in which her main focus would be a home filled with warmth and care. After graduation, she enrolled in a local college, choosing to study art and design. She was drawn to creating beauty, but over time she realized that her true purpose was family. Matthew Johnson was born in Salt Lake City, but his childhood was completely different. He grew up in a family with military traditions where discipline, responsibility, and duty to the country came first. His father served in the Army and his mother taught school, instilling in children respect for work and a desire for order. From an early age, Matthew absorbed the strict principles of life. He understood that success requires effort, and trust must be earned. As a teenager, he began to think about a military career, inspired by his family's history. In high school, he already knew exactly what he wanted, and after school he went to university. Combining his studies with training in the National Guard, he was distinguished by his self-control, pragmatism, and determination. But he was not a cold person. Behind the stern exterior, there was a man who knew how to be attentive and caring to those he loved. In 2000, Jennifer and Matthew met at a party organized by their mutual friends. It was a meeting that did not portend anything special, but it turned out to be fateful. Matthew immediately singled out Jennifer among the other guests. There was something natural and bright about her that attracted attention. Her ease in communication, open smile, and sincere interest in people instantly won him over. Jennifer, in turn, was impressed by his confidence, manners, and the calmness he exuded. They spent the whole evening talking as if they had known each other for a long time. And from that moment on, we never parted. Their romance developed quickly and harmoniously. A year later, realizing that they had found true partners in each other, Jennifer and Matthew decided to get married. The wedding took place in a warm family atmosphere. After the wedding, they moved to a new house in Salt Lake City, which became their first real family nest. Jennifer took up home improvement, and Matthew continued to build a military career, providing the family with stability. Their lives were filled with happy moments. They traveled together, had warm family evenings, and made plans for the future. Over time, 3 children appeared in their family, which became the most important and exciting stage in their lives. From an early age, the eldest son demonstrated excellent abilities in studies and sports, and the 2 younger daughters brought laughter, joy, and sincere childish tenderness to the house. Jennifer devoted herself completely to her family. She did everything possible for her children to grow up in love and care. She found joy in motherhood, in creating comfort, and in family holidays together. Matthew, despite the workload at the office, always found time for the children. He was the father who helped with the lessons, taught cycling, and read bedtime stories. Their house seemed to be the epitome of perfect family happiness. But the first cracks began to appear behind this idyllic picture. In the spring of 2024, Jennifer unexpectedly went to court, asking for a protective order against Matthew. In her statement, she claimed that he was a threat to her and the children. However, the court rejected her request, citing a lack of evidence. This rejection was a severe blow to her. Her behavior began to change. She left the house more and more often, seeking to be alone or spending evenings with friends. Relatives noticed that Jennifer seemed to be withdrawing from her usual life. She stopped talking about her affairs, avoided long conversations, and often looked depressed. The family, which for many years seemed to be a model of harmony to others, was on the verge of collapse. Matthew tried to maintain stability for the sake of the children, but he felt that it was becoming increasingly difficult to keep the family together. He tried to talk to Jennifer, but she became more and more withdrawn. Her decisions became more and more impulsive. She seemed to be looking for a way out, but she didn't know which direction to go. Family and friends noticed the changes, but no one could predict what would happen soon. On the morning of September 29, 2024, a call was received at the Salt Lake City Emergency Center. On the other end of the line was Jennifer Gledhill, who reported that her husband, Matthew Johnson, 51, was missing. She claimed that she had not seen him for several days and could not contact him. His phone was disconnected, and attempts to track him down through friends and colleagues failed. The disappearance looked unusual. Jennifer explained that her husband always warned her if he was late, and never disappeared without a trace. The situation required immediate police attention. The first conversation with Jennifer took place on the phone. She described in detail that she had last seen Matthew on the evening of September 28th. He returned from work, had dinner, spent the evening as usual, and went to bed. He was gone in the morning. At first, she thought he might have gone out on business or for a walk, but when he did not return home in the evening and did not answer the phone, anxiety grew. Jennifer called her friends, but no one had seen or heard from Matthew. It seemed strange considering his organization and habit of always being in touch. By the time the police were called, she had spent 2 days in the dark with no clue as to his whereabouts. Around noon on September 29th, police arrived at the Johnson family home. It was a 2-story house in a quiet suburb of Salt Lake City, well-maintained, with a neat yard and a view of well-being. The neighbors spoke positively about the couple. In their eyes, Jennifer and Matthew were an exemplary family. No one noticed any open conflicts or suspicious behavior among them. Jennifer met the officers at the entrance. She looked tired, but she kept her composure. The police began by asking about her husband's habits, daily routine, and possible reasons for his disappearance. She said that he had no planned trips or business trips, and he never left without giving advance notice. After a brief conversation, the police asked for permission to inspect the house. Jennifer agreed without hesitation and led the officers inside. The house was in order. There was even a smell of cleaning products. When the officers asked about this, Jennifer calmly explained that she had recently cleaned up. The rest of the premises, the basement, garage, and backyard, were also examined, but nothing unusual was found. The police found out that Matthew loved nature walks and sometimes went fishing, but did not inform his wife about his plans for these days. When they asked if his colleagues might have known about his whereabouts, Jennifer replied that she had already contacted them, but no one had any information. Matthew's phone had been disconnected since his disappearance, adding to the anxiety. Then the police checked the dressing room and personal belongings. Clothes, shoes, and documents remained in place, which did not correspond to the scenario of voluntary departure. However, Matthew's car was missing, which meant that he could have left on his own. This fact created a twofold situation. On the one hand, he could really leave on his own business. On the other, the lack of communication remained an alarming signal. Jennifer was calm, but it was obvious that she was tense. She answered all the questions without noticeable excitement, but at times her voice sounded muffled. The police asked her to recall any details that could help in the investigation, and to let them know if new information becomes available. She agreed and thanked the officers for their work. After examining the house and talking with Jennifer Gledhill, the Salt Lake City police began an active search for 51-year-old Matthew Johnson. His disappearance did not fit into the usual cases of missing persons. No notes, phone calls, or digital traces that could indicate his intentions. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. The investigation began with a thorough combing of the surrounding areas. Police officers and volunteers checked parks, suburbs, woodlands, and Matthew's favorite routes. Hiking trails, fishing areas, and campgrounds where he sometimes visited were surveyed. However, not a single trace confirming his presence in these places was found. Local residents actively joined the search. They put up landmarks, reported any possible sightings to the police, but none of the leads led to a result. One of the main issues of the investigation concerned Matthew's mobile phone. His device had remained switched off since September 29th, which immediately alerted investigators. The call details request showed that he made his last calls on September 28th. The conversations were routine, work matters that didn't contain anything related to the disappearance. Geolocation data confirmed that the last time the phone was in the couple's house. After that, the connection was cut off, which indicated that he did not leave the territory with the phone with him. Banking transactions often provide key clues about the whereabouts of the missing, but in Matthew's case, cash flows were cut off on the same day as phone activity. The last purchase was made on the morning of September 28th at the supermarket. Since then, his bank cards and accounts have not been used, which completely ruled out the possibility of voluntary departure. The police also checked whether he had withdrawn cash before disappearing, but his financial activity abruptly stopped. Since Matthew's car disappeared with him, investigators assumed that he could have left the city in his car or taken public transport. Passenger lists of flights, trains, and inner-city buses were checked. However, his name was nowhere to be found. Surveillance cameras at train stations, the airport, and main roads did not record his car, which ruled out the possibility that he had driven far outside the city on his own. Matthew's colleagues from the National Guard of Ukraine were also interviewed. They reported that he had not been to work since September 29th, which was extremely unlike him. He was characterized by discipline and responsibility, so his colleagues also began to worry. His friends also did not notice any signs of depression or any other disorders in his behavior. He didn't mention any problems or talk about wanting to disappear. Neighbors reported that nothing unusual happened on the night of September 28th. However, one of them reported only that on the evening of that day, a car similar to Matthew's car was leaving the garage. He couldn't say who was driving. A week after the start of the search, the Salt Lake City police appealed to the townspeople. Orientations with photos of Matthew and his car were distributed on news outlets, social media, and on street banners. Despite the high response, no new information has been received. Neither the car nor the missing man himself were found. As the investigators analyzed the collected data, the conclusions became more and more alarming. Matthew disappeared without a trace, leaving no preparatory steps. All his usual routes remained without movement. The phone went off for the last time in the house. The bank accounts remained untouched. The transport terminals did not record his trip. Surveillance cameras did not detect his car after September 28th. Although there was no formal evidence of enforced disappearance, each new piece of evidence indicated that the escape theory was becoming less likely. A few weeks later, the investigation was at an impasse. Salt Lake City police officers tried their best to piece together the scattered evidence, but none of the versions provided a clear explanation for what happened. It seemed that the man had literally disappeared into thin air. However, fate decreed otherwise. Late in the evening, the station received an unexpected call which turned the course of the investigation upside down. The anonymous informant not only provided details about the possible circumstances of the disappearance, but also linked Matthew's wife, Jennifer Gledhill, to the probable murder. That evening, the detective on duty picked up the phone. The voice on the other end of the line was tense and anxious. The stranger said he had important information about the Matthew Johnson case. He insisted on complete anonymity, claiming that he was afraid for his life. But his words sounded so that the investigator immediately realized that this conversation could radically change the course of the investigation. The source admitted that he had been in a secret relationship with Jennifer Gledhill for several months. According to him, during one of the meetings, she made a confession that bothered him. She killed her husband. The caller claimed that Jennifer shot Matthew in his sleep. According to him, she took the body out in a minivan, but she did not act alone. Someone was helping her, but he did not know the name of this person. Up to this point, the police already had reason to doubt Jennifer's honesty. Despite the lack of direct evidence of her involvement in her husband's disappearance, her behavior raised more and more questions. The neighbors noted some oddities. When asked about Matthew, she answered evasively or changed the subject. She avoided socializing with people, especially those who knew her husband well. She did not participate in the search, did not post flyers, did not give interviews, but perhaps the police should have searched her house again. During the initial inspection, the officers noticed a pungent smell of chemicals, acrid, aggressive, as if the house had recently been cleaned. They noticed that there was no usual mattress in the bedroom. When asked about the reason, Jennifer replied that the old one was worn out, and she decided to replace it. This fact alerted the investigators. People rarely change mattresses during the same period when their loved one disappears, although it also happens. When the detectives returned with an additional search warrant, Jennifer greeted them with the same outward composure, but her movements became more tense. This time, they used special chemical reagents capable of revealing hidden traces of blood. Checking the bed frame brought an unexpected result. Tiny spots were found on the surface, invisible to the naked eye. Laboratory analysis confirmed that it was Matthew Johnson's blood, but it wasn't enough. The police conducted a more detailed analysis of the bedroom and found microparticles of gunpowder. This meant only one thing: a shot had actually been fired in this room. The crime scene was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Everything pointed to the fact that Matthew Johnson was killed here in his house, and then his body was taken out. Jennifer tried to create the illusion of disappearing, but too many details pointed to this house, and the traces of blood and gunpowder formed one picture. Now, the police had proof, and Jennifer Gledhill had less and less time left before the circle finally closed. After receiving new evidence, investigators focused on one of the key points in the investigation: the search for the mattress, which Jennifer Gledhill hastily replaced shortly after her husband's disappearance. During the interrogation, she claimed that the mattress was old and had fallen into disrepair, so she decided to throw it away and get a new one. However, the police had a different opinion. Investigators began checking garbage collection routes and requested records from local waste disposal companies. It took several days, but eventually we managed to trace the path of the discarded mattress. He ended up at the municipal landfill, where the waste from Jennifer's area of residence was sent. The task force went to the landfill to try to locate the lost item among thousands of tons of garbage. The work was difficult and tedious, but after a long search, the investigators managed to find a mattress that matched the description. There were dark spots on its surface. Laboratory tests confirmed the worst fears. DNA analysis showed that the blood traces found belonged to Matthew Johnson. This became a strong piece of evidence that proved that the crime had indeed occurred in the couple's home. Now the investigation had not only a hypothesis, but also a material confirmation of the murder version. The next object of the investigation was Jennifer's minivan, as the informant claimed that it was in it that she transported her husband's body. After examination, the forensics team also found bloodstains on the seat upholstery and in the luggage compartment. Despite the obvious attempts at thorough cleaning, experts confirmed that the blood belonged to Matthew Johnson. Now the police had physical evidence that confirmed that Matthew's body had been moved after the murder. The totality of the discovered traces allowed us to build a sequence of events and present a clearer picture of what happened. The investigators were sure that Jennifer not only hid the crime, but also carefully planned its consequences. An anonymous informant who provided key information on the case claimed that Jennifer Gledhill could not hide the traces of the crime and dispose of her husband's body alone. And now the investigators had to focus on finding her possible accomplice. One of the first steps was to study the details of Jennifer's calls for September. Investigators noticed an abnormal increase in the number of calls to her parents, Thomas and Rosalind Gledhill, immediately after September 21st, the day Matthew Johnson stopped contacting them. Prior to Matthew's disappearance, calls to his parents were rare, but after the alleged murder, phone activity increased. The calls made in the dead of night were especially alarming. She could have been discussing with them what to do next, one of the detectives suggested. The suspicion that Jennifer's parents might have helped her conceal the evidence seemed unimaginable. Perhaps one of them helped to remove the body, and the other was cleaning the house, while the police had not yet begun an active investigation. At the same time, the investigative team studied the recordings from the surveillance cameras installed on the main routes and in the area of Jennifer's house. Their goal was to find out if she had used a car to transport the body, and if she had a passenger. Their guesses were confirmed. The cameras recorded that, late on the evening of September 21st, Gledhill's minivan left her house and returned a few hours later. Jennifer was driving, but there was also a man in the passenger seat. The recording was not clear enough to immediately identify the passenger. The car was moving towards the outskirts of the city, where there were forests and deserted areas, ideal for hiding the body. According to a police statement on September 21, 2024, Jennifer Gledhill allegedly shot her husband, Matthew Johnson, in the head while he was sleeping at their Salt Lake City home. And after Matthew was killed, Jennifer allegedly took a series of actions to cover up the crime. Investigators believe that she placed her husband's body in a container and moved it to the family minivan. Using a car, she took the body outside the city and buried it in a shallow grave. After transporting the body, Jennifer returned home to eliminate the traces of the crime. She replaced the mattress and used cleaning products to get rid of the evidence. These actions were aimed at complicating the work of the investigation and creating the appearance of normal life in the house. Jennifer Gledhill was immediately arrested. She was charged with first-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and concealment of evidence. Thomas Gledhill, 70, and Rosalind Gledhill, 67, were arrested on the Thursday, October 24th, in Salt Lake County during a traffic check. Their arrest was part of the investigation into the death of Matthew Johnson, who tragically died in September. The police charged the couple with obstruction of justice related to concealing evidence and refusing to cooperate during the investigation. According to witness statements, Thomas and Rosalind spent about 5 hours cleaning their daughter Jennifer Gledhill's house on September 24th. However, Rosalind claimed that they were there for only an hour and then completely denied the fact of cleaning. In early October, police raided their home, where they found a plastic bag with a loaded pistol. This package, according to investigators, resembles the one that Jennifer allegedly showed to one of the witnesses on September 19th. According to police, Thomas Gledhill claimed during the interrogation that he remembers little about the events of that day. However, mobile phone data indicates that Thomas was the person Jennifer contacted when, according to her, she buried Matthew Johnson's body. Despite this, both parents refused to cooperate with the investigation and did not provide any information about the location of the body. Cottonwood Heights police urged the public to refrain from jumping to conclusions. We ask everyone to remain patient as the investigation and trial are still ongoing. Her parents, Thomas and Rosalind Gledhill, are now being investigated as accomplices. The investigation of this case is ongoing, and it is too early to say anything with certainty at this stage. Law enforcement agencies are working hard to shed light on all the circumstances of the tragedy and answer the many unanswered questions. In such situations, it is important to give the investigation the opportunity to do its job based on facts and evidence, and not on guesses or assumptions. We understand the incredible loss Matthew Johnson's death has caused to his family, friends, and everyone who knew him. This is not only a trial, but also a huge human tragedy that has shaken the lives of many people. Our hearts and thoughts are with Matthew's loved ones. May they find support and strength to go through this difficult road to the truth. It is important to remember that justice always takes time, and we hope that it will prevail.